Arc of Infinity was the first serial of Doctor Who's 20th season, first broadcast in 4 parts from the 3rd to the 12th of January 1983. Now, I would personally say that Arc of Infinity is one of those stories that you sit through because you know that sitting through it you'll get to either the good stuff or the really bad stuff, depending on which one's coming up next. To me, Arc of Infinity is somewhat unremarkable, but here's the thing, I don't actually consider it bad. I don't actually consider it very bad, or necessarily... It's not the greatest story ever, but it's one that you sit through because you know that good stuff is coming if you do sit through it. So, the Doctor, played once again by Peter Davison, and his companion Nyssa, played by Sarah Sutton, they're simply called back to Gallifrey, where they're informed that a being known as the Renegade is trying to escape from the antimatter universe and make its way to Gallifrey, into the matter universe. And after a brief consultation with the likes of President Barusa, played by Leonard Sachs, Chancellor Thalia, played by Elspeth Gray, and the Castellan, played by Paul Jericho, amongst others, it's revealed that in order to stop the Renegade from making their way into the matter universe and bonding with the Doctor, they're going to have to execute the Doctor. And it's up to Nyssa and the Doctor to try and find a way to stop this from happening, stop the Renegade from escaping, and ultimately save the Doctor's life, which they do have help with in the form of Damon, played by Neil Dalglish. And meanwhile, while this is going on, Tegan Javanka, played by Janet Fielding, who was previously left behind at the end of the story Time Flight, has made her way to Amsterdam in order to meet up with her cousin, Colin Fraser, played by Alistair Cumming. However, upon finding her cousin missing, she inquires with a man he was travelling with, Robin Stewart, played by Andrew Boxer, and try to find out where Colin has gone and if they can ultimately get him back. Now, one thing that I will say about this particular story is it does have a really good cast. I mean, as I mentioned, Peter Davison, Sarah Sutton, and Janet Fielding, once again, they all do great work here. And I mentioned most of the others, including Leonard Sachs, Elspeth Gray, Paul Jericho, Neil Dalglish, Alistair Cumming, and Andrew Boxer. But two characters that I feel really need to be highlighted here that are actually really good in this story. One is Commander Maxwell. He's a kind of guardman on Gallifrey, and he seems very much to be a character of shoot first, ask questions later, or take prisoners first and then find out what's going on. And the key part here is he is played by future Doctor actor Colin Baker. Now, this isn't the only time that Doctor Who would end up doing something like this. They would have actors who appeared in Doctor Who in minor roles who would later go on to bigger roles, such as Karen Gillan and Peter Capaldi. But Colin Baker, I believe, is one of the earliest ones, and he does actually do a really good job here. I mean, you can tell that he is a character who you dislike because he's actively hunting down the Doctor, but at the same time, he's not necessarily a bad guy, he's just trying to do his job. And I do feel he does very well here, to which I can see why he was later picked up as the Doctor. The other one I want to talk about is Councillor Hedin, and I was really surprised when I was doing my research and I looked up who I was looking at the cast list for this episode, and I saw his name down there and I was like, huh, I didn't realise he was in Doctor Who. That's kind of cool, because he is played by Michael Gough. And for those who don't know, Michael Gough, he is one of those actors who you may have seen him in other things, but I feel one of the biggest roles he was known for, to which this was 1983, so he hadn't done it yet, but I feel nowadays people know him for it, is he played Alfred Pennyworth, the butler to Bruce Wayne in the 2 Tim Burton and 2 Joel Schumacher Batman films. Now, I know that everyone is going to have their own favourites version of Alfred Pennyworth, their own favourite on-screen version. I mean, you may be a fan of Alan Napier, you may be a fan of Michael Caine, you might be a fan of Jeremy Irons, or you may be a fan of Alan Serkis, or even Sean Pertwee. But I personally feel like while everyone is going to have their preferences on who's their favourite, I think at the moment, arguably the best Alfred Pennyworth is still Michael Gough. I still think, having played the character across 4 different films and 2 different directors, I personally feel like Michael Gough is still the best Alfred Pennyworth. That's just my opinion on the matter. So I actually found it really cool when I saw his name in the cast list. I mean, okay, he doesn't have a huge part, but yeah, I was really surprised to see it. Although I was later informed that Michael Gough had in fact already been in Doctor Who. He appeared in the 1966 serial The Celestial Toymaker as the titular character. So even though he had appeared in Doctor Who before, I still find it really cool that arguably the best Alfred Pennyworth was in Doctor Who. Now, what they ultimately all end up discovering is that the renegade who is trying to make their way back into the Matter Universe and back to Gallifrey is in fact a legendary Time Lord known as Omega, whom the Doctor has encountered before, and here he is voiced by Ian Collier. Now, Omega has his own kind of creature known as an Ergon, played by Malcolm Harvey, and I feel the Ergon itself is a little hit or miss. Omega, I do feel, is a good choice here, and it is nice to see what plan he is doing. Basically, he plans to make his way back into the Matter Universe by bonding with the Matrix on Gallifrey and also trying to take over the Doctor's body. And I do feel they do it very well here. Now, I will admit, I do prefer the original design of Omega from the Three Doctors. Like, that version, you can tell, that's legendary. Kind of the huge, tall gold mask and the blue robes and everything. I'll admit, I'm not immediately fond of the design of this one, but I feel they had to try and update with the times. I mean, the Three Doctors was back in the early 1970s, this was in the early 1980s, so I do get they had to update the design. Personally, I do prefer the version from the Three Doctors, but I feel they tried their best here. Now, upon watching this with, as I say, a few family members, we did find two small criticisms that came up that I will admit to. One was a family member of mine did find it rather funny that Omega's TARDIS, like this huge grand TARDIS and his big plan, his underground lair, is underneath a crypt, a mansion crypt in Amsterdam, to which we seem to find that funny for some reason. And the other thing that I'll admit I did have a small problem with is that I did feel that Omega's defeat right at the end of the story was a little lackluster. I'm just saying that. I mean, you may not agree with me, but I did feel his defeat was somewhat pretty low. To which, to give a basic spoiler look at what ends up happening, while they're able to stop Omega from fully transferring himself, he does transfer enough of himself to get himself a body, which is proven to be an almost identical duplicate of Peter Davison's Fifth Doctor. He then tries to escape through the streets of Amsterdam with the Doctor, Nyssa, and Tegan kind of chasing after him. And you do get to see some quite nice moments of him just kind of trying to fit into the crowd and just enjoying being alive. But then his body starts to decay, and you see it kind of slowly changing, slowly becoming more kind of mangled and wrinkled as time goes on, as he slowly decays. And then the Doctor, Nyssa, and Tegan manage to corner him on a dock. He gets shot by the Doctor with the special gun, and he ultimately just kind of fades away. And I will admit, I did find that ending a little lackluster, if I'm being honest. I mean, as I said, this is one particular story that isn't necessarily the best, but isn't necessarily the worst either. I mean, it's not Caves of Androzani, but it's also not Warriors of the Deep. It's the kind of story that you watch in between to know that you know the good stuff's coming, but this is one that's not necessarily bad, not necessarily the best, but you sit through it because you know there's good stuff coming. Anyway, at the end of the story, it's revealed that Tegan is rejoining the Doctor's crew, having been fired from her job at Heathrow Airport. I did look it up, and apparently she did something like, was rude to a passenger at Heathrow, so she got the sack and is now rejoining the Doctor and Nyssa to go back on their travels after having been left behind at the end of Time Flight. So it is nice to see her joining back the team. So there you go, there's my quick little review of Arc of Infinity. As I said, not the best, not the worst, it's the one you sit through. Anyway, until next time, see ya. Anyway, I've got 2 more classic stories on the way here, so till those arrive, I'll see you there.